Welcome to the Living and Active Word podcast. In this week's episode, we'll be covering the topic of Jesus being prominent in our lives. Let's read verse 27. John answered and said, "A man can receive nothing unless it has been given to him from heaven. You yourselves bear me witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent before him. He who has the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is fulfilled. He must increase, but I must decrease." This is John's response to his disciples who come complaining about how Jesus was gathering a large crowd and a large following. John the Baptist starts off by saying, "A man can receive nothing unless it has been given to him from heaven." Some people say, oh, he's speaking of himself. Some people say, no, he's speaking of Jesus. I think it's both. That he's speaking of Jesus and he's saying, God is clearly bringing the success. But obviously, this applies to us or any believer as well, that we cannot receive anything good unless it's from God, from heaven. In 1 Corinthians 4:7, Paul says this, "For who makes you so superior? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not?" That's a little different context, but the big idea is there that what good do we have? What gifts do we have? What blessings do we have, or abilities, whatever we might say that is good? What do we have that is good that it hasn't come from God? See, we can't boast in any of our gifts or talents or abilities or any success because it's from God. And even in John 15, Jesus said, "Apart from me, you can do nothing." So there's a good application here. There's a great truth here that we need God to be successful in His eyes and in His kingdom. In verse 28, he goes on to say, "I've already told you guys, I'm not the Messiah. Why are you guys getting so worked up?" If you go back and read in chapter 1, you'll see that John has already declared that, in fact, he is not the Messiah, but he is the one preparing the way, the voice in the wilderness. And he's already stated this. But he wants to reassure them, he wants to make it clear that he is only the one who was sent to prepare the way. And in verse 29, he now gives us an illustration. He says, "He who has the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom stands and hears him and rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice." And then he says, "Therefore, this joy of mine is fulfilled." John the Baptist likens himself to the best man, to not the bridegroom nor the bride, but the one who is going to bring the two together. John is making the point that the spotlight should be on the bridegroom and the bride, not on the best man. John the Baptist is more than happy. He says, "My joy is fulfilled because I'm getting out of the spotlight. I'm getting out of the front and center and the attention, and it's moving to Jesus because this is the point of why I'm doing what I'm doing." I like the commentary that David Guzik provided for this verse. Quote, "The friend of the bridegroom. John explained to his followers that he was like the best man at a wedding. He isn't the bridegroom. He isn't to be the focus of attention, but to supervise the bringing of the two people together. In the Jewish wedding customs of that day, the friend of the bridegroom arranged many of the details of the wedding and brought the bride to the groom. Nevertheless, the friend of the bridegroom was never the focus of attention and wanted it that way." Close quote. Lastly, John says, "He must increase, but I must decrease. And this is such a great attitude for us to have, this attitude of humility. And John greatly demonstrates humility throughout the scriptures, that it wasn't about him, it was about Jesus. I love what Matthew Henry wrote about this verse. Quote, "If our diminution or abasement may but in the least contribute to the advancement of Christ's name, we must cheerfully submit to it and be content to be anything or to be nothing, so that Christ may be all." Close quote. Let us have this attitude, this mindset, this heart, and let this be our prayer, that we would decrease and that He would increase in our lives, that people would see Christ in us, that His will would be done and not ours. Thank you for listening, and God bless.